The title of the record is Casual Gods, and on the cover you show some, was it miners?
Yes.
Up a mountain, Brazil. And he expected some sort of a theme or
about the miners,
or some sort of thread, a motif throughout the piece. But with the exception of Cherokee Chief, it all seemed the songs seemed to be rather disjointed.
Well, I think that there's kind of a light side to the album and a dark side of the album, and the cover goes with the dark side. I think that Let It Come Down, Bobby, maybe even Little Man with a Gun, and Cherokee Chief kind of compose the darker side of the record that have some sort of sense of political violence and political people caught in the kind of the trap of political situations. Bobby, of course, is about suicide, which may be a personal. But I didn't want I think that albums that would deal with such perhaps serious subjects exclusively start to be kind of heavy-handed. And so I tried to mix it up. I tried to have songs like Rev It Up, which are very kind of happy. To me, it's like a song like Eddie Cochran, almost boy-girl car. So to me, it wasn't disjointed as much as that I deliberately wanted there to be two sides to it, but I wanted the cover and the name to draw out and cause them to pay attention to the darker side or the more serious side, because I thought that would be maybe easier to ignore.
Sometimes we abbreviate the translation in the interest of time, as we only have 50 minutes of time here.
2つもある。
Still, attention hadn't been to focus the attention of the listener maybe more on the darker side. Was there any intention of dealing with third world problems? You talk about political violence.
Yes. Well, I think that Cherokee Chief is a song about the death squads in El Salvador. Let It Come Down is more a song, you might say, maybe a Sandinista, but more someone, kind of a national liberation front, or someone kind of perhaps preparing for an invasion. Could be for the United States. I mean, when I thought of it, it would be the United States, but I didn't try to be too specific about some of these things. I think Cherokee Chief is an interesting song because it works as kind of a car song. It has a chorus you want to sing along to, and yet when you listen to the lyrics more closely, you realize that it's talking about something more serious. I kind of wanted, trick would be the wrong word, but I wanted a song that kind of unfolded, and that perhaps an audience that would not normally listen to a song about El Salvador, because it was in the form of almost a heavy metal song or something like that, would the music would catch their ears, and then the lyrics would be a process of discovery.
The Talking Heads, it seems, have always, well, maybe not all the time, but you've approached the music by using third world rhythms without really incorporating a message that deals directly with the countries.
Yeah, I think Seen and Not Seen would be about the only one. If you remember that one on Remain in Light, which had this kind of the story of some, kind of civilization coming and kind of destroying society, an indigenous society. So that was one that did a little bit. But no, not too much.
He was wondering, what do you think of artists who do try to handle both sides, not only the sounds of the third world or different parts of the world, but also artists that handle deal directly with messages that relate to that part of the world, like, say, for example, a Paul Simon, or Sting, or Peter Gabriel.
Well, I'll tell you, this kind of relates to what we were talking about. To me, what I tried to do in the political songs on Casual Gods is I tried to tell a story that took place within a political situation. Cherokee Chief is a little bit a man who drives for the death squad, but it's his deal with the devil, you might say. He's kind of aware that he had pretty lousy choices, and in that way the song actually is sympathetic to his problem. It's not this kind of easy one where this person just because of sadism became a bad man. It's more like be oppressed or join the oppressors. And he certainly realized that the only reason that anyone ever paid any attention to him is because he had a gun and because he had this Jeep, which was this instrument of terror. That, I think, I'm very excited by. This is a new way to handle politics, which I don't know if I don't think anyone else has done this. I did a song called 5 Minutes. I don't know if you ever heard this with Bootsy Collins, which used Ronald Reagan's voice, kind of a rap song, using that famous slip of the tongue where he talked about bombing Russia in 5 minutes. And that was a very overtly political song. But these, I say, are kind of covert. They don't attempt to tell you what to think about a situation, but they try to invite you into being interested in the situation. They have a point of view, but they don't hit you over the head with it. I think that they work great as songs, and I think it's I think it's something I may pursue some more. I think that politics and music is a very uneasy match. I think, with the exception of Bob Marley, who I think really wrote wonderful political songs, but maybe wonderful because the Jamaican patois is so beautiful to hear that something like get up, stand up for your rights. I think that someone with the more kind of direct, clipped English that anyone who was kind of educated in either England or the United States has, that might sound kind of boring or stupid. But with a very lilting sound, it can be beautiful. To look at what Paul Simon did, I like Graceland, but what I don't like about it is this is going to sound kind of mean, but to me it sounds like a little bit like someone had an African record and they were singing in the shower along, and they made up their own songs. And it's kind of, Paul Simon sits on top of the music. If you took Paul Simon away, I think I'd love those songs just as much as I do with him there. I think what Talking Heads does, and I think that I have done the same thing when I have incorporated, say, third world rhythms, is it's definitely Talking Heads music first. You know it. When you hear a Talking Heads album, you go, Talking Heads. You recognize it with all these different sounds. And it's as if we have learned the method of this kind of third world, or certainly African, we'll say, interlacing of rhythms, and made it our own. I think when we met some of these musicians we used on Naked, first of all, they were familiar with our music, but I think they didn't feel like we were asking them to make the music and then we would be on top. We had already created the songs. And they said, this is an opportunity for us to do what we already do well, because our style will fit with this style. I think that has set us apart than most of the other people that have done this. I think Peter Gabriel sometimes does that quite well. I must say I never listened to Sting. I just cannot stand his lyrics very much.
Is that right?
Most of the time. Well, I think that they're usually sort of pretentious or something like that. And I just preferred the Police a lot more to what he's doing now. I kind of liked it in this is something so adult about this. I probably could hear something and like really love it, and go see a concert and really like it. I think the Police had something very special about them, and even though he has some fantastic musicians with him, I don't think that it's anywhere near as revolutionary as what he did with the Police. I think this version of Little Wing is an atrocity.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, anyone who's heard the original by Jimi Hendrix, I mean, it's just, it's I don't know, it's like Muzak to me. I'm not supposed to say these things.
Right. It's constructive criticism. The album Casual Goslings came out right before Naked, and it was a very carefully made record, almost a very commercial sounding record. Let me get the second part of the question right there. It seemed like, rather than just the solo album of a Talking Heads member, you were just trying to strike out on your own as a viable solo artist, sort of make it on your own.
That's right.
As opposed to something you just sort of put out in your extra time.
That's
like,
right.
Say, the Tom Tom Club.
Well, I think the Tom Tom Club is serious, too. They have a new record they've made. I think that they want to have a career that has an independence to it as well. I think that I think Tina in particular, but both Tina and Chris have they really feel like it's most important that music be fun more than anything else. Whereas I think that maybe I have a gloomier point of view. I think it's important for music to do many things. And this is one of the reasons why, like the answer to the first question, I wanted to mix it up. The coming out so close to the Talking Heads, I did not think was an ideal situation. Basically because I'm on Phonogram, my record came out about a year later than it would have. I had finished this record before I did Naked and before I did the Bodines record. But maybe because I got so involved in the Bodines and things like that, it's just things... We made a decision that we wanted to, first of all, examine whether or not... I was on Warner Brothers and EMI. Whether that being... I didn't want anyone doing me a favor putting the record out. It's something that you really have to guard against as someone, because everyone, no one's going to insult you and say they don't like the record or something like that. But record companies are famous for just throwing records out.
Right.
And if they're lucky, something like some break happens. I just produced this very good band, Semi-Twang, who are on Warner's. Warner's has, in the United States at least, has just such an abundance of product.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Warner's was into the project. They spent about $250,000 making this record. 3 producers worked on it: Chris Thomas, Mitchell Froom. It was not a cheap record. They've done nothing for it because they don't know how to fit it into their schedule. They're busy, Prince is out or something, And anyway, so I was very happy. The Phonogram was approached. It was a very nice. Actually, it's a kind of an interesting story. David Bates, who is I think it's the head of A&R, was visiting Gary Kurpertz, who's my manager in Los Angeles. I'm really going off on a tangent, so tell me if you want me to stop. And he was visiting because he was going to hear the Wendy and Lisa record, who had just left Prince. And I was out talking to Warner Brothers, and I stopped over at Gary's, and he introduced me to David, and I said, "David, do you want to hear this record of mine?" And he goes, "Yeah." And there was no staring. We went out to the car, and fortunately, for the first time, I'd rented a more expensive car when I'd gone to L.A., which had a great stereo. And it was like we went and listened in the car, and this guy Julio, who was a partner, came, and it just sounded great in there. And I think that David, from that point on, was like really excited. But I mean, that was such an improvement because you felt like they're doing this. They don't have to do this. They're doing it because they want to do it. But that delayed the record coming out a year. Negotiations took longer than you would think, and also as you start to approach Christmas, if you don't have a record out by about September, you might as well wait to January. Because what happens is that you gain any momentum and Christmas comes along, you lose it, and it doesn't start up after the year. So that's why I was so close to Naked. You were also talking about that the album, though, seemed very much like it was me embarking on a career.
Exactly.
Well, it's definitely true. I think one of the things I did with this record, and perhaps why I was careful about it, was I wanted my singing to be better than on the Red and the Black. And I took singing lessons, and I practiced, and I made sure it sounded better. And I also made sure that when I mixed the record, you really heard the singing. I think that one of the great dangers that people who have not been singers all along, when they make solo records, they kind of bury their vocals. And it's like an immediate giveaway that they're kind of worried about them. And people then, very often then the songs are, it's kind of looked upon as like kind of an interesting anomaly, but maybe not as something really that's going to be, it's not a beginning.
Are you prepared to say give priority to your obligations to your own solo career as opposed to your duties to the band?
Well, I don't think it's a problem. Because I think there's just really time for both. Talking Heads right now has no plans to tour. We do a record every 18 months.
You just need to sit on your hands anyway.
Yeah, I just don't think there's that problem at all. I think that if Talking Heads were to decide to tour, that I would insist upon singing some of the songs from my solo record in the tour. and the Tom Tom Club would do some, and so that would probably be some of the focus of that tour. So in that way, it would benefit my solo career as well. I'm not worried about it. I certainly think more about my solo career than I do about Talking Heads, because Talking Heads has a momentum. It's kind of like if you have a new baby and you have a teenager, you're going to worry about the baby rocking out in front of traffic. Until the teenager starts taking drugs, you don't. So that,
different life stages.
Yeah.
I mean, with everybody doing so many different things, aren't there? Isn't there a chance of political struggles going on? It's like,
well, there is, but there's the chance. There was the other chance before we did this of people feeling somehow that they were never getting a chance to express their ideas enough. And by doing all the different projects we do, even if you feel a little bit frustrated while making a Talking Heads album, it's not the only thing you do. And it makes everyone more democratic, and David as well. I mean, I don't... this could be easily construed to say that it is somehow a way that Chris and Tina and I can allow David to push us around, but actually it's the opposite. For instance, on Naked, David had written some songs that I felt were reminiscent of true stories before we got going. While I was doing the Bodines album, he had some extra time. And I heard them and I said, David, I think these are nice songs, but I don't think they're different enough. I really think we should do something different. And I kind of pushed us to go back in the rhythmic direction, which of course made Naked a little closer to Casual Gods than Little Creatures or True Stories, which were the records that were recorded while I made Casual Gods.
With such an array of musical styles, like among you, Chris and Tina and David, you're split up in different musical directions. There's no chance of any clashes, you think? I mean, does your desire for democracy in the band sort of eliminate that possibility?
Well, I think that we have plenty of clashes at times, but I think that the first thing is that by doing other projects, people are more able to choose whether something is a good idea rather than being obsessed with it's their own idea. And that immediately makes things much smoother sailing. I think there's kind of a healthy competition between all of us in the other projects we do. I think that Chris and Tina and I are in a different position than David. Chris and Tina and I think, must make more commercial music, at least at first, whereas David, because he gets the lion's share of the credit for Talking Heads' commercial success, it behooves him to do very artistic things, because it only adds to his aura as a complete artist or as a mysterious person. Whereas I think, for instance, if I had done the Knee Place, this is my solo record I didn't put out, I think people would have gone like, what's this? That's nice, okay. I think that I needed something that got on the radio and grabbed attention and sold some records, and people went, wow, this is like a commercial entity in itself. I think that Chris and Tina are in that position too. I think that now I could conceivably do records similar to Casual Gods that have that commercial success and do something else. But I don't think I could just do something that was obscure without... I mean, I think that, for instance, Andy Summers in The Police felt the same way, that he had done the record with Robert Fripp and things like that, but he felt like he had to do something that was a little more commercial, because it's like he started to get thought of as like this kind of a great instrumentalist, but so what, or something.
You haven't been given any you haven't been getting any credit as a composer on either Little Creatures or True Stories, right?
Well, we arranged the music there. David had written those songs with the characters from the movie True Stories in mind. So it was certainly a songwriting that was a little more solitary for him. But it's kind of like the traditional thing: someone comes in and sings a song playing a guitar for you, and then you make the music.
Right.
So it certainly would not have been anything like what it was without us. But it was. He was much further along in the process of writing than on this album. The four of us sat down and created music first that then he found lyrics for. But so we were there, so it was different.
I mean, in order to present your songs, I suppose you had to put together a solo record. You couldn't have done it in the Talking Heads. it would have to be through a solo career.
Well, I think that we made this choice to do it this way. I think there could have been Talking Heads conceivably could have made more records. We could have said made 3 a year.
Yeah.
And made my record would have been a Talking Heads record, and the Tom Tom Club could have been a Talking Heads record. I mean, in a way, it would have been better. Because why have to keep building up these separate careers?
So you come out with a white album every 8 months or so.
Yeah, I mean,
Everybody's got a little bit of it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it would have been an interesting concept. I think, and in some ways, I think it would have been very good because we are very good critics for each other. And I think that when we're working alone, sometimes I miss that. I think that, for instance, on the Tom Tom Club record, I made the suggestion that they do the song Femme Fatale, the old Velvet Underground song.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it would awaken something in Tina's voice, and in fact made her write some other new songs from that. It was a really good thing for her. And I really pushed and pushed and pushed for them to do that. But I think that's the kind of thing that we can help each other doing, and it would have been nice that way.
I guess you were the last person to officially join the band.
Yes.
And he notes that in the early days, for example, until Remain in Light, until all the albums until Remain in Light seem to feature more of your contributions by you. Seem to sense your contributions more on those records. Ever since then, David Byrne's influence has sort of taken over.
I think that maybe people don't know what I'm doing on the records anymore. I think that that ever since the time of Eno kind of got involved, no one could figure out what I was doing anyway because I think that what a lot of people have said is that when they heard the Casual Gods record, it made them rethink Remain in Light and a lot of the other Talking Heads records because they see that I can write music just like that if I want to. But the first 2 records, what I did is the songs were already written, and I kind of made them more musical. I made the different parts work better together.
That's another thing you noticed.
Yeah.
He said you like work with the Modern Lovers. And you seem to be the most musician-like of the whole group.
It's true, and I think, and on Fear of Music, although I wasn't credited with it, actually about half the songs I co-wrote with David. A song like Heaven, I was able to. He had kind of had the rudiments of the 2 parts of the song, but they didn't work together. And I found ways to make them by changing the key and making a transition between the 2. Got it so he could sing it. There was a song like Mine that I did something on. I Zimbra, I wrote a lot of the parts. I think actually I wrote the bass part on that song. This Remain in Light was very different because we all went down to the Bahamas with very little done before and just kind of went straight ahead. One thing that we realized that after that is that which we've tried to guard against, is sometimes it gets to be a race to put down parts. Because there's only a certain amount of room. If someone like goes, I have an idea, and I have an idea, and I have an idea, then, well, there's just not any room for other ideas. So we've kind of figured out ways to guard against that. Each album has been different. But I feel very satisfied with how much I've done.
It's not like you've had the certain dissatisfaction mounting, and that's sort of exploded in the form of a song.
One of the things, though, that I like, when we were a foursome on stage, I think that people in general had a clear idea, if we had the lights on, of what everyone in the band did. You could just hear it and see it. David, of course, was a singer. He was the leader of the band, but you really saw that it wouldn't have been this band without any of the others. Once we added the other people, it became too confusing to the eye. So that you look at the singer, and what do you look at next? The background singers. You look at, when you watch Stop Making Sense, the camera focuses on David, and next it focuses on the background singers, then it kind of goes around and shows everyone. This does not do a lot for me in particular, but Chris and Tina or me. But with me, it's more difficult because there's another guitarist, there's another keyboard player. It's harder to know what I'm doing. I knew this was going to happen when we put the band together, and it was me who put this band together. I knew the people and hired them, but I knew that we were going to be one of the best bands in the world, and I just decided, well, I'll take I know that I'm the force that created this band, and okay, I'll be, it's kind of a behind the scenes role. But I must say that it's exciting to be in a band where it's clear what I'm doing too. We've been having this tour for Casual Gods, and it's been very exciting.
You said in an interview before that you kind of, when the band went to make Naked, that you wanted to kind of avoid it being a Talking Heads do a musical trip around the world.
Yeah.
When you put together a record, I mean, let me get the question clear here again. These things are long, it's kind of hard to remember the last part there.
それと同時にあとエスニックの方に
Say, for example, when you go out of your way to say use ethnic sounds, is that because like you're seeking a way to express your roots more aptly? What accounts for that kind of?
I think it's just you like the sound.
Just like the sound too.
I think that I am not alone in this. I think that there's something very appealing about some of the kind of indigenous instruments found around the world, because they're very rich harmonically. And I mean, obviously Peter Gabriel is someone who's also been and that samplers and things like this allow you to use those instruments in more within the Western scale and things like that with much less problem. But if you were to hire someone who played some of these instruments, sometimes the scale that they normally play is a different scale, and now you can use them. I like the sounds because they kind of because over time they've gotten a certain they kind of speak to the soul or something like that in some interesting way. For instance, on Bobby, on Casual Gods, you hear the sound of the didgeridoo, which is an Australian instrument. It's an Aboriginal instrument. And I think that it really gives it this kind of, it's creepy in a way. And I want to use it again because it has, and I think that so many of the Japanese instruments, for instance, have a certain plaintiveness that a violin doesn't really have. There's something a little bit different about the sound of a koto plucked than there is about the string of a harpsichord or something like that. It's just a different sound, and it's appealing.
Is there any significance in the fact that the red and the black is more similar to the to your more recent solo record than it is to either Talking Heads record released at the same time? It seems like it was more of the two share more in common. Casual Gods and the red and the black share more in common than either Talking Heads record released at the same time.
Yes.
Which I guess is Remain in Light and Naked.
Well, I don't know if they do, actually. I think they both are, those two are actually related. It's just that there are other ones in between. When I finished making the red and the black, I didn't feel like, I want to invent. I felt that I didn't feel like I had to. I felt that there were plenty of new things to explore using some of the ideas I'd begun there. Particularly because I knew when Talking Heads began to move in the direction of Little Creatures and True Stories, as much as I liked that, I really prefer very rhythmic music, and so that was fine with me. I could do that, and that was a primary thing for me with Casual Gods, was that the rhythm really be preeminent.
I guess that's the main thing in common with the red and the black. Så det som vi testar på. Ja, så Talking Heads och det seems like with the Talking Heads, you're always concerned with doing something new and different. And I guess maybe in that sense, the solo career acts as an outlet for maybe sort of natural, the direction you naturally possess.
Well, I think that's sort of true, but I think that Talking Heads doesn't always change so drastically each album. I think that Little Creatures and True Stories have quite similar qualities. I think that Speaking in Tongues and Remain in Light have some very similar qualities. So I think that they're different, but I think that after a while we think we really want to make some changes. So maybe next time I'll make a big change.
conscious effort on the part of the Talking Heads to change every album, is there is?
There is.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, there's an effort to not repeat ourselves.
Uh-huh. But still, you do end up with unavoidable similarities.
Yeah. As you've made, what is it, 8 or 10 albums or something like that, you start having. First of all, you have a backlog of things that kind of fall. You can not fall into, but that there will be relationships to.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, the easy ways of being different are all gone.
Yeah, right.
No.
Do you think people think of you, think of the band as that kind of a band? Somebody who's always trying to do something new? And,
I think that's one of the things that is appealing about Talking Heads. I think that once we didn't repeat ourselves after the second record doing another Al Green song, which would have been the most straightforward commercial approach that we could have made. Take Me to the River had been quite a success on the radio and really established as a band that might be played on the radio. And we very deliberately then did not ever do another cover song. I think the people respected us for this because we were not going after the easy success. And it meant that people were looking forward to what would we come up with next rather than wanting us to perfect one thing. I think you take a band like the Cars, for instance, who in a certain way their albums are similar, and there's like this progression of trying to perfect an idea, and it gets perfected, and then you get bored with it, and then the bands really get in trouble because they got to come up with something really different. I think that we're much luckier because we said all along, like, you can't count on us to like try and perfect what we did last time. We're going to just probably do something different. I think that for a long time it limited our record sales, but I think it did a lot for our longevity.
Integrity, I guess, is established.
I think that we were always in it for the long period, the long time. We looked back at the history of, say, of jazz, where people made hundreds of albums and made albums for 30 years. And I think that we thought, well, I mean, we may not make it for 30 years, but we don't have to be successful in 1 year. Let's be successful over 5 years or 10 years, and this is a kind of a lifetime interest, you know.
How many bands have you produced so far? Younger bands?
Well, not always younger. Nona Hendryx, who's older.
Who's older?
Then I co-produced a band called The Escalators that I was in with Busta Jones. Violent Femmes, Elliot Murphy, Bodines, Fine Young Cannibals, It's Immaterial, and Semi-Twang. 8.
Uh-huh. And do you think of those bands that have come to you, any of them were looking for Jerry Harrison as member of the Talking Heads, as opposed to Jerry Harrison, the musician and producer?
Well, I don't think that there was any sense of separating the things.
Uh-huh.
I think that each of them was different how each one took place. But I think that it was respect for the Talking Heads, which was the first reason that they were interested in me.
Were you ever like offended by somebody saying, Jerry, don't give us that idea. I mean, make it sound more like the Talking Heads. Make it sound like this song.
Well, no, it hasn't been a problem.
It has been a problem.
I think that I'm really quite happy with my producing career. I think if you listen to the records I've done, they all sound completely different. They're very different bands. And I think I've brought out within each of them something intrinsic to their style, which has been very good, and not tried to imprint my idea of music on them and make them kind of pawns in my way of making music. And so therefore that is they've almost all of them have walked away feeling like, well, they really made a good record.
Make it to the 10th album. What's your favorite period during that time?
My favorite period of being in the band, I think, was the beginning, because it was so new feeling. And
You mean like before the first record came out?
no, I meant like the first few years, the first few records. the touring was, even though very hard, was very exciting because it was also because I'd been in the Modern Lovers and gotten close to being able to go on tour and do these things, and then kind of having it fall apart. To finally actually doing that was really a great thrill. I think that Remain in Light and Fear of Music might be my two favorite Talking Heads albums. But I mean, I really like them all. I really like Naked an awful lot. So you always kind of like the one you just did too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I had to recommend to someone, if you could only buy one Talking Heads record, though, I'd tell them to go buy Stop Making Sense. Because it has performances from the whole history of Talking Heads, so it gives you an overview.
でその間で
Ever thought about leaving the band?
Not too much. Once in a while, you know, the only time you ever think about it is that if you have to do something, if you have conflicts of what you can do.
But I mean, there's never been like one time where it's like it was almost certain that you were going to leave the band.
No.
Never came that close.
No. I mean, basically, as part of it is that Talking Heads, we set it up that we can work together, kind of continue, you know, we like working, first of all, we like working together, but that there's plenty of opportunity for other ways of expressing yourself. So then the only reason to leave would be if you somehow felt that you were just bored or that you were missing something else that you could do. And you'd have to feel it pretty strongly because, I mean, to have spent 10 years of your life to kind of get Talking Heads to a certain place, you want to be there for it.
Right.
Okay.
Last question here.
Yeah.
The future solo plans and future band plans.
Well, I think the next thing I will do, we're on tour with Casual Gods. We're about to go to Australia and New Zealand, do 3 weeks there. There was So what do you think of this camera? Bought this today. We're going underwater.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
Great.
Thank you. And so then there may be some more touring around too.
Wants to be with Daddy. Water.
And you know what he wants. And there's I'm sorry, when are you going to be back?
What time are you finished?
10 to 1. 10 to 1. What time are we done? 7? 6?
7.
7.
I'll be back by then.
Okay. Sorry, what was the question?
Future solo.
Oh, yes. Well, then, and the next thing will be to do another solo record. And then after I finish that, depending on whether I have to go on tour again right away, I would like to do some more production. The unfortunate thing is that when you have all these other projects, sometimes you get offers to produce things that you'd like to produce that you can't do it because of the time.
Conflicts. What sort of offers did you have for production?
Nothing, no famous bands and things like that.
Mainly young ones.
Yeah.
Is that through the record company, or they just come
Through a few record companies. But I think it might be fun now to do. The one thing I haven't done is done like a more experienced band that's kind of looking for something else. So I think that would be a nice challenge.
What about Talking Heads? What do you have in
No plans right now. I think they'll probably in about a year we'll make another record.
But you won't tour until then?
We won't tour. We aren't touring.
Why is that? When you get to the status you have now, I guess you don't have to tour that much.
It's because David's too busy. We should tour. I'm very disappointed that we're not touring.
Was that right? Whoa. So David's obviously giving priority to his own
Yes.
stuff over the band.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody that can talk him out of that?
Maybe you can. I can't.
Record company doesn't get on his back or anything.
Yes, but I mean.
He just sort of shoves him off.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of like, well, I don't rule it out, but I have this plan to do this now. So I mean, this has gone on. I wanted to tour the last few years, So I'm sick of it, so I'm not going to deal with it anymore.
じゃあトーキンヘッドの
The Talking Heads are going to take the same sort of route as the Genesis or Rolling Stones.
Rolling Stones went on tour, didn't they?
But very, still there are like 4 or 5 year breaks in between the tours.
Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll do it then.
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
写真は